Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming. Hope you're enjoying the show. Today is probably the best day to get in and see everybody, and it's not super duper crowded. So everybody I've talked to today is really enjoying themselves, and want to welcome you and thank you all for coming, taking the time out of your lives to share some of that with us, and a whole bunch of friendly faces here I've spoken a lot to here today. I want to keep it real informal, and if you have something to say or we can share back and forth, I'd love to do that. When I was asked to do a seminar, and I was kind of wondering, what would be something that's real useful and handy for everyone. We all have them times when we're hunting and things aren't going as well, and we start doubting ourselves. We start wondering, maybe I ought to change up what I'm doing. And I thought that'd be a good thing to consider as, before you start your season. And the ability to recognize patterns is what smart people are able to do. I heard that the other day, and I'm like, that is wonderful, because there's a lot of patterns that all of us either exhibit through our own behavior or what we see in the world, right? And when we're doing things, having a pattern and understanding the way the pattern works and then taking advantage of that is super, super handy. And it makes life way less painful. So keep that in mind as we work through some of these scenarios. And also, too, you may have some scenarios where you've been hunting and things aren't working out, or you're wondering if you ought to change, and recognizing those different times when you should change, and then maybe picking up what you could do or should do is next. There's two parts of it that you really need to understand when it comes to whether you should change up your tactics or not. Let's see if I can free myself up here. Whoop. Hadn't done that yet. There's the natural things, the natural patterns that you have to pay attention to, right? And those consist of weather, the deer's behavior, the game's behavior, whatever it is. You have to watch the human patterns, like your fellow hunters, just regular traffic, the people who live in the area that you hunt, the regular patterns of their movements and how it happens. You have to watch the weather patterns, and that is a huge one alone. Whether it's raining or sunny and hot will change your tactics all the time. And sometimes a small change in tactics can be a huge game changer. Many times over the years, myself, I've been doing something and it doesn't seem to be working out. And I've only been there for a little while maybe. I haven't put the plan to execute completely. And I'm halfway into it, and I'm already doubting myself. You'll have tons of times when you start doubting yourself. The other thing is you might doubt the place you picked, the area, the tree stand, or the method that you're hunting. You might question that. There'll be tons of times when you're having this little mental breakdown, and you're feeling some of the pressure of, I want to get this, I want to make it happen, I want to be successful. But at the same time, you need to sit there, and it's super cold, and you can't take it anymore. And so these little elbows that come along in your hunting, and you have to decide what to do and when to do and how to do it next, are really important. Some of the times when you're going to need to change your tactics, one of them is going to be when you get older. One of them is going to be when you hunt with someone young. You change hunting partners. Of course, we already talked about the weather. Cold fronts, winds will make you change your tactics sometimes, whether or not there's snow, rain, hot sunshine. If you're moose hunting in hot sunshine, your tactics are going to be way different than if it was snow and cold. The number of people and the type of people you hunt with will naturally, almost invariably, change your hunting tactics. I don't know how many times the boys and I have been hunting. We have someone new at camp, or even we decide at a moment's notice, today I'm going to hunt with Casey, or today I'm going to hunt with Ryan. We just have a feeling, and we say, well, let's go together. That sometimes alone is enough to really change your tactics. And it can also change your mood, and it can change the outcomes like crazy. And it might even change your expectations of how the hunt will go. I know when Jimmy says, I'm going to go hunting with Casey, Jimmy's mood is like way up here. You can see that in the videos. You watch that. His mood swing, because Casey is successful and I like hunting with Casey. And when I go with Casey, I see things, right? You can see that in him. When you're out in the woods and you're now deciding to go hunting with someone, consider those things. Even before you say, yeah, I'll go with you today or whatever, consider those things. Consider also, too, the weather, the timing, and all of that, because it matters like crazy. And the patterns that are created in your first initial decisions will set and make and break the day for you. It'll be one or the other. So consider those quite a bit. And those are the small, little, intricate things that change the outcome of the way things go. Keep that in mind all the time. Sometimes over-planning and overthinking can screw things up. But if you feel good, and this is the one thing that our channel really talks about a lot, is if you feel good and you're more harmonious with your decisions, the outcomes are usually much better. If you're attached to things not working, things will not work. I'll say it again. If you're attached to things not working, it will not work. You will actually make that not work for you. Keep that in mind as you do all your hunting, as you do your shooting, your practicing, as you prepare and plan for a trip or something like that. Keep that in mind all the time. One of the things I sometimes worry about is access. Can I get to where I want to be? If I pick a spot, how do I find it? The access. If there's cars parked all the way around the mountain I want to hunt on, and there's cars parked all the way around it, and I'm attached to that, and when I get there and I drive it all, and I can't go there today, what's that going to do the rest of my day? Sometimes it's actually a good thing, right? And the river's feeding the fish. And I have to keep that in the back of my mind as I do things. So access is one of the things. I'm like, can we get in here? Can we do this? I kind of feel like I ought to be doing this today. I go a lot by just my feelings, and it helps keep me in tune with what's about to happen, and I'm ready for it when it does happen. Of course, you have season and dates. We have the clock all the time. The clock is ticking on deer season all the time, and you'll feel some pressure sometimes. And sometimes when the clock is ticking, it'll tell you this is time to change your tactics. I've been sitting in the stand 4 hours. I haven't seen a thing. It's the middle of the day. The wind just changed. I may be polluting this spot if I continue to stay here. And it's my best stand. I probably should get out of here and go do something else. Time to change the tactics. And I do it very deliberately. Whenever I'm changing tactics, I do it deliberately. I'm like, nope, we're done. We're not doing this. We're going to do something else. And I change, and I don't look back. I don't worry about it too much, and I'm not too attached to the results of it. And that allows me to change more easily, and it allows me to keep a clear head as to the possible patterns that may be lying in front of me that I should take advantage of. The wind is blowing from this direction. I've found 5 different buck in different places, and I need a west wind for this buck over here. And I'm over here, and it just changed to a west wind. I'm not seeing anything, and I don't want to blow this spot. And if I continue staying here, I'm going to blow it. I got to get out. I'll instantly say, that's it. We're going over here, and now we're going to start this. I don't know how many times I came to the fork in the road and went, left. And that was the right decision, and it worked out for me. And I feel that way inside. That matters like crazy. A lot of times, if something goes wrong, I change tactics. If I'm following a deer and I've busted him 4 times in a row, and it hasn't worked, and with a lot of work at the end over here, it still hasn't worked, time to change tactics. Drop that deer, find a new one. Or stop following him and swing parallel, right? I'm going to change my tactics, and I want to recognize what works and what doesn't and adjust accordingly. Getting frustrated. That's a great time to change your tactics. It can keep you mentally back on track because you'll feel better about a new move. I always start a new move, and especially when I was younger, and even the boys did a lot when they were younger, we would start something, and they would be like, and we get partway into it, And then I'd say, nope, stick with it. You decided this, let's keep going. Went that extra quarter of a mile, come around the corner, boom, deer right there. So like I keep that in mind all the time. Other game can sometimes make me change my tactics. I'm turkey hunting, in comes the coyote, and he disturbs everything, and it goes off. A few minutes later, I'm thinking, well, it'll calm back down and I'll be okay. And boom, a hunter shows up, walks across way out there. The bird started, but then went boom, back in the woods. Now I'm out of here. Or I may not be out of here. I just need to shift my position and just feel better about it, but not leave it a little bit. And that's just a small, subtle tactic change that would matter like crazy. Other people, of course, and your partners, we did discuss that already. Sometimes when you're not getting results, that's a time to change as well. If it just isn't working, pulling off something different is a lot of times a big thing. It can be very easy to be associated with a spot. I've always seen a deer over here. This has always had deer on here. If I sit here long enough, I'll see one. We have these like habitual commitments to things, and we almost refuse to leave that stump that has worked for us a couple times. And now I just don't trust going anywhere else. And sometimes that saying, no, I'm out of here, and going to something different can be an absolute game changer. Of course, if you get injured, you're going to have to change your tactics. If you were a tracker and you twisted your ankle, from now on, you're going to have to change your tactics. You won't be walking anywhere near as far. You'll have to be at more of a pinch point, a choke point of some kind, closer and easier to get to. Injuries are one of those things you'll have to work with, along with your general physical ability. A fella came in the shop. He was lucky enough to draw a moose permit this year for Vermont in archery. He's 77 years old. He just applied because I figured I never got it and it was going to be a good cause. He comes in the shop and he's like, can I do this? And I said, well, how are you going to do it? And he says, I'm going to use my traditional archery equipment, and I know a few spots in that zone, and I'm just going to go for it. Really? And you can shoot anything? And he said, yeah, it's an either permit, so like I can just go. I said, well, have you been practicing? Well, I'm going to have hand surgery. Right? And he came out with all these different limitations of what could happen between now and then. And I'm like, well, you've really picked off the Olympics of hunting, right? To go with a tag that you got. And now we're going to go out into the Wild Willies that I generally don't visit and only been to a couple times. And we're going to go out with traditional archery equipment. It's going to have to be close range, and at least it's early, and there's lots of vegetation, so you got a little better chance. I've never moose hunted before, don't know too much about it. So, well, now you're going to be on this 3-month-long moose hunt between now and then, getting ready, practicing, working your body and getting ready for all the walking. I'm like, for the next 3 months, you need to walk all you can possibly walk. You need to carry things while you walk, right? You're going to want it. The barbell is going to be your new friend. And you should shoot your compound bow as well. And if you can end up at the end of the 3 months being ready with a compound bow and shoot those extra 10 yards or 15 yards farther, you could end up with a moose at your feet. And that's exactly what you want to do. So being retired and being pretty, let's go get them, like for the next 3 months, you're on the Olympics of moose hunting, and you just got to start training, and I want you to look at it that way the entire time. And good luck to Bob. I hope he gets one, and he's already started working, had that hand surgery, and doing a great job. That's the kind of commitment, and you don't want to back off from it. Stay right with it and work it hard. It deserves it, and he's a nice guy, and he deserves a beautiful moose laying at his feet, and I hope it's a good one. It's very easy to do the right thing at the wrong time, and you may be there a little too early or a little too late. I get to my bow and arrow spot, and I look over all the apple trees. There's a small group of apple trees, and I look it all over, and I look in the dirt underneath them all, And there's one gigantic buck track in the middle of all of those different deer. And there's a lot of deer using that apple orchard. I think to myself, okay, I can get in here very quietly if I come in from the south side. The wind, if it's just right, will roll. It's open out past them, and they're all in the woods. So the wind comes over the top and comes back to me. So I pick the right wind, and I sneak out. It's not too far from the edge, probably 70 or 80 yards from the edge of no trees, but they're all inside the woods. The wind is perfect, and it goes over me and out, and it circles. It like tumbles, and the wind comes right back and lifts my scent up in the air, and I'm really loving it. And I said to myself, well, I don't know. I don't use cameras and stuff like that, so I don't know exactly when it ought to be. So I'm just going to pick that right day, and today feels right. It was nice and cool. I said, I'm going to go an extra couple hours early. So I head in early. I get there at 1 o'clock, and as I walk up to my stand, about here to the fan at the back of the room is a body. And I look at it, and I said, uh-oh. And I put my stand down because I set it up, and I'm right there. I don't want to approach it. I was trying to be quiet. It looked like a giant buck to me, but I hadn't seen anything of it. I pull into it. I look up, and there's a gigantic deer standing there. And I say, oh, that doesn't look like a doe, and I can't see the head. So I set my stand down real slow, and the head comes up, and it looks right at me, and it's a 160-incher in Vermont. And I about went, oh. And I don't have my arrow on my bow yet. I've got it in my hand, and I'm trying to slide my arrow on there, and I can't really shoot. It's not really a shot, and that thing just jumps off kind of easy, and he doesn't know. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm 2 hours, 3 hours ahead of what should be when I think he's there. And he was so relaxed, and he was there in the middle of the day, and I didn't know those things. So I had to, well, let's go for it, right? I had to make a decision. Do I leave or do I just get up in the tree? And the way the wind was, I'm like, let's just get up in the tree. So I get right up in the tree. An hour and a half later, small buck comes through, doe comes through, a few fawns, a small bear way off in the distance, and no more buck. And I was disappointed. I let about 3 days go by, and the wind was perfect again. The thermals were just right. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go 2 hours earlier. And I went at 10 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't get there early in the morning, but I went at 10. I got there, and that son of a gun was there again. I was broken by then, and I got a real good look at that rack that second time, and oh, man, what a buck. It runs, and I'm like, well, I'm not doing the same tack that didn't work last time, getting up the tree and just waiting. Let's just give him a few seconds, and I'm going to follow him a little bit. So I started off. I saw the direction he was working generally. I couldn't swing to the downwind side. I had no choice. He was going crosswind, and I could not move ahead of him and hope for him to come by me as he was working his way up this slope. And it's maybe just a stray chance I'll get a chance at him. And this time here, he's got a real good look at me. And I was like, man. And I started up the slope, and the wind changed, and it was blowing the right way for me to continue. And he went up the slope farther, and I went probably a quarter of a mile and came around a bush real nice and easy looking for that buck. And there he was at about 25 yards and already locked on to me. And all I had was his tail and his head looking right at me. And boom, off he jumped again. He ended up dying that rifle season. But that change in tactics gave me another chance. And it was only by sheer luck that I didn't get a chance to shoot at him. And noticing the pattern of it not working the first time and changing it up and just going for it is what's mattered. I don't know how many times we've been in some real dry, terrible conditions and said, you know what, the deer are just laying down. They're not doing anything. And if we just sit here and do nothing, no one's going to see a thing. They're not going to get up, and we're all just going to sit there, and the day's going to go by, and nothing's going to happen. Those kind of times, too, that's where I'm changing tactics, and I'm doing something different. I'll go and hunt a different place in the middle of the day and then come back and hunt back home. I can remember years ago, Bob Folkrod. He's like, in the middle of the day, get up out of your nice prime spot, your morning spot or whatever it is, go to a cornfield with the wind blowing and the frost and all the leaves have dropped, and walk around in that cornfield during the day, looking for the grass that the farmer missed out in the middle of that, and that's where a buck will be bedded, right in that. The first time I did that, I walked right up on a buck, looked down the corn row, and he was laying down 25 yards from me. His head was towards me, and I was like, man, that's a tactic I should have been using a long time ago, and I didn't end up getting a shot at him, and then he moved. He just naturally got up on his own, pulled into another spot. I followed him for a half an hour, and he fed a little bit on some of the clover, and there was a big rock pile in the middle of the cornfield, and he fed around that, and I watched him in the middle of all that dry corn in the wind, and I felt invisible, and he moved around to the far side, bedded down. I snuck in on him, and I missed. The corn pulled a couple leaves of corn, pulled my arrow down, and away he went. So don't be afraid to change up your tactics. It works really good. The other time is to be present when the wind changes, or when a cold front or a warm front, when there's a front of some kind. Most animals are active, and they're either getting up and getting ready to move or beginning to move during a front of some kind. Same as fishing. Fish the fronts, it's the same exact thing. The other thing is if you have gear problems. I've been out there a few times and dropped the rifle. Now I'm not going to be able to shoot as far, right? The gun isn't the same, right? You're going to have to change your tactics sometimes because of your gear. You forgot something and left it home, so the tree stand isn't going to work the same, right? All those things. Keep that in the back of your mind. Most of the successful changes have to do with your goals. And if you set realistic or usable goals and you keep that on, that's another time when your goals, you're not seeing the kind of quality of buck that you want to see, or you're not seeing the numbers of deer you want to see, again, you'll have to change. Ryan, you want to bring that up a little bit? Let's move into the e-scouting part of it here. Yep, keep working your way down right here. A lot of times, especially territory-wise, when I do change tactics and when I'm looking for something different, I'm looking for new ground, looking for different ground, I'm noticing the patterns. A hunter's ability to look at a mountainside and to be able to pick it apart from the road, do this a lot. Get practice at it. Being able to understand the patterns that go with the mountain and what you can see from a distance can open your eyes to new spots and things like that. When I take a look at this right here and I see these notches, I see that open area there, the edges, the island effect of this one clump of big, huge trees right here. From that distance, that's probably 6 miles. From that distance, those are gigantic trees. It's level right there. You'll be able to see those kinds of spots as you practice that and then walk it. So I stand back a long ways from roads. I look at exactly what I'm going to deal with on the mountainside. And this is one of the advantages to hunting in places with a lot of elevation, is that you get to see the landscape. If you're someplace where the land is fairly flat, like down here, the terrain is much harder to identify. It's a lot tougher. The Onyx and I use my maps on my phone all the time. I switch it over to satellite, and I use that. And that is so handy as well for seeing your drainages, seeing the differences in terrain, and being able to pick out islands. That's the other thing, is like this island effect that really matters. You're able to see different places and all of those edges. That group of spruce right there, if you were rabbit hunting, you'd want to walk that edge. You just look at that and you can tell that is where a rabbit would be, around the edge of that thing. All those little moves that you make on the mountainside and looking at those it'll open your eyes to the possibilities when you're looking at new terrain. And that's been very, very, very relieving for me, because what I thought I only had a few places to hunt, now I find out there's a billion places to hunt. Like, it opened my eyes to the possibilities of the landscape and what I could be seeing. And I practice especially when there's snow on the ground, I'll practice saying, ooh, there's got to be some activity around that thing. There's also probably some rock right there. And by looking at all that, just like a bass fisherman, I'm using those spots. That's like lily pads, right, for the bass fisherman. There's going to be something around that. Now I can start looking for sign and then stringing different islands together. So if I'm going to walk that mountainside, I'm going to walk right up through here. I'm going to swing over to that island. I'm going to go up onto the edge and work that greenery back through here. And if I see any sign in those places, I'll now turn on to the sign. So I use the terrain to help me get to the sign and then help me get to what I want to see and then allow me to pick the spot. That is so handy to be able to do that. And I'll do it from the ground. I'll do it from my eyes first. Then go to the ground to like solidify what I thought about that place. And with practice, after a while, you'll be able to say, oh, there'll be a big buck track right through that, right along that crest right there, and there's a little bit of a sag. There's going to be a track right there. I'll like put an X in my mind right there. I'm going to find something. And when I walk up there and I actually find it, the confidence that you build doing that is going to be so, so helpful. Let's move on to the next slide here, Ryan. Understanding forest types, and of course the human activity is a big deal. Work on all of your limitations. Know the things that you're weakest and you're the worst at, the baddest at. Like, I am terrible at walking slow. Practice it. Know your own weaknesses. And when it comes time to get in the crunch, most of the time, you're your problem. So many people I've been with, they are their problem. And so I start looking at from my own weaknesses, and I check on those, and I say, okay, what parts of my day am I not enjoying? What parts am I not so good at? And what parts of my own behavior are screwing me up? And I make a problems list of Rodney's problems. These are Rodney's problems. Sometimes being impatient is one of my problems. I'd have to say, if you said, what's your biggest deer hunting problem? I'm impatient. I want to push, 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 go, go, go. I want to do that a little bit. And as soon as I started working on that, I went a little slower, and it started doing better. Same thing with Taylor. I got to say Taylor for sure, like wants to grind, grind, grind. Taylor also had an I'm going to go get him attitude. Let's go get him, right? And that's very intense, and a lot of animals go, ooh. Dogs don't like that. They can recognize that in a person a long way away. So can a moose. Boy, that person is intense. They can tell those things, and they can screw you. Yep. Go ahead. Any questions? What are some of the worst times for any of you when you say, you don't like what you have going on and you want to change it? I know Ryan would get tired. His legs, we'd be walking along when he was younger, especially. He doesn't so much anymore. Now he's like, hey, Dad. When he was younger, he would walk along and he'd get a little bit tired. Many of you may go out with young people and the tiredness will start settling in. And you're just starting to get to the good spot, right? That can be a time when you have to change your tactics. A fella at the booth we were talking to just barely, he's like, well, my kid just wanted to throw sticks. And he kept throwing sticks. And I had to say to him, look, you want to throw sticks or you want to go hunting today? What are we doing? I asked Taylor the same thing. Taylor's throwing sticks at me, and I'm like, you want to just stop and throw sticks? That's what we're going to do, right? Because, we're missing out on our deer hunt here because that's not what's happening. Adjust all of your small moves into those bigger ones as you go. Let's move on. Navigation. That is gigantic. 100%. Navigation can be a thing. If you're a little worried, am I in the right spot? Am I where I wanted to be? Am I late or am I early? That can matter, especially if your navigation is off a little bit or something like that. Practice your navigation. I took the boys out. They had little Garmin eTrexes, $100 Garmin eTrex GPS. We went on geocaching.com. You go on geocache.com, and there are little geocaches everywhere where you go online, you pick a spot near you, and it'll tell you the coordinates to a little small like treasure chest that anyone can go to, and you register your name on geocaching, and I would give the boy the coordinates. I would tell each one of the boys, punch these numbers into your GPS. So they would punch north, south, and all the different numbers, punch it in, and now turn your GPS on. We're going to get in the car, and we're going to drive, and I want you to navigate me. They would get practice inside the vehicle saying, oh, down this road. Oh, it's over there 2 miles. So we would drive, and they'd say, well, the GPS says this way, turn that way. And they would steer the car. And when we got close, and it said 75 feet right over here, Dad. And then I'd open the door and say, okay, boys, go. And they would race each other to it. Now, of course, the accuracy was like 35 feet. So it wasn't real good, and then they would all start searching for that little hidden cache. And when they got it out, they would take a treasure out and put a treasure in and register their name in the little book. And that geocaching off year was great for them because they learned that through the GPS, and it was a treasure hunt, so they loved it even more. Then when we would go out in the woods, I'd do the same thing. We'd get out there, and I'd say, okay, which way's the rig? And I'd say, tell me with a compass where the truck is. And they would turn their body until Red was in the shed. Right there, Dad. And then we'd be good. Turn on the GPS. How far is it? Tell me before the GPS warms up. Tell me how. It's right there, the rig is. Tell me how far you think it is. Guess at it a little bit. And then when the GPS came on and they said a quarter mile and it was 3/8 of a mile, oh, okay. That was very good for them as well. And at the end of the day, I'd say, bring me home. You're going to bring me home. And if you're doing it wrong, I'm not going to tell you. Let's go. And I usually do it when they had plenty of time in case they made an error. Right? I don't want to be out there 3 hours after dark just because I'm letting them do things wrong. But when they did that, they used their compass first and said right there. And then they turned it on, and the GPS said right there. And it's 1.1 miles, Dad. I said, okay, let's go. Most of the time, a mile was almost an hour walk through the woods with 2 people especially. So let's go. And boom, 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 right down through, especially in the dark. Yep, we did that quite a bit. Wood structure will matter like crazy as well. Your tactics on this side of the road, where all those cuts are, and your tactics in the greenery are going to be different. The speed that you walk will be different. The amount of noise you make will be different. So the wood structure will change and alter the way that you might hunt there. And you want to think about and like maybe itemize the different ways you can do it. And think about this while you've got nothing else to do because you're deer hunting. The transition areas for me are key. Wherever the woods change, that edge is very, very important to me. And it's one of the first places I want to look. And as soon as I start seeing sign along transition zones, the brook, the cliff, the edge of softwood and hardwood, whenever I enter and move down through the woods, I love transition zones. I hunt them all the time. Deer are animals of the edge. That's an edge, and I'm going to use it. I'm on the edge of the field. Go easy. Every time we crest the hill, it's a transition, right? I would tell the boys, go easy right here. Go easy. There are places where you'll go fast and slow, and that's a tactic adjustment that you want to make. That is very important. Terrain, of course, goes without saying, but the steeper, the nastier, the swampier, that's going to change your speed. It's going to change your tactics. Dan Infalt, I just barely watched a video he put out a couple days ago, and he's in elephant grass, like up to here. He's making a deer trail through the cattails that connects 2 islands, and now the deer will start using that. He's scouting, and he's looking at the terrain from above and picking a spot and then setting the deer up so that they'll be able to get from this high dry spot to that high dry spot. And this is probably a nice, easy route. And it goes by that big tree where I could set up a stand. And now I'm scouting, and I saw all this from the air, and I said, ooh, go here, go next to that stand, and then go over there and connect it, and I'll make a nice trail, and the deer will start flowing along that, and it'll give me a place to set up. That was genius, right? That's something I've been doing for quite a while, and it is a genius move to set the deer up and yourself from the tactic of looking at the ground from the air, understanding what you're looking at, and knowing which spot to pick. Many times, the other fellow who does he just barely made the moose, I can't think of his name now. He just barely made the moose video. Will, in his Seacoast bucks, he's looking at a giant swamp area, and there's 3 different trails that you can see on satellite that the deer are using. And he looks at that from the air, and he says the wind usually blows X direction. He checks out the direction of everything, and the wind usually comes in this way. So I'm going to hunt this one first, and if I'm not seeing what I want to see, I'll move upwind to the next crossing and hunt that the following day. He's developing his tactics beforehand and using the satellite to set that up. That's a tactical brain move that will matter like crazy. And every brain move that you can make will really help you like crazy, and the terrain will be shown. We're so lucky to have satellite. That is so unbelievably a good tool. Much less drones, much less cameras. Even the scouting that we do, we share information. We don't do hardly any preseason scouting at all. I want to go into the arena with nothing, and I do it all during the season, real time, right then. But he'll be in one swamp and I'm in another, or Casey's on a mountain over here, and we're sharing information during the day. And right now it's kind of hot, but a front is coming in, and the second the moose are on their feet, we tell each other, moose are up, they ain't laying down no more. Time to change your tactics. Be careful, they're on their feet. You're going to see them, right? So we're doing that throughout the day, and real-time information is pretty hard to beat. Bedding and water, those go nonstop, right? You're looking for those all the time and looking to take best advantage of those. Structure versus security, and the mixing of the two is also vitally important. We'll go back to Dan Invalt's video there. Across the street on public land, tons of big buck sign, tons of hunters, tons of just traffic. Between the hunting and the deer, there's tons of traffic. It's all nighttime traffic, everybody's camera says, and no one has these great big huge bucks on daylight. He finds the nastiest spot next door where no one's probably going to walk, and he goes out in all that deep muck, some of it up to here, and he goes puddling through that, and he finds 5 little islands of high ground, and they're covered with buck sign, covered with deer sign. Guess where they are during the day? Right in that garbage. If going to those crazy places doesn't suit you, at least go to the edges of them. You got a better chance, because that's where they are. Where a buck was and where a buck currently is, that's the difference. I don't know how many trail camera pictures in the dark, they don't mean nothing, because you want them during the day. When you're seeing your target buck during the day, and you're after a single buck that, like, you're a target deer of some kind in an area, you want to get him early season while he's still staying put and the rut hasn't stirred up. You don't have the chaos of the rut, so you want to kill him early or late. And you want to get it down to exactly where he is and remain as undisturbed as possible, and then hunt him on that perfect day. And you need 5 of those different bucks. There's a whole bunch of fellas that don't have a lot of notoriety, but this is their tactic. They put out a zillion cameras, they find big bucks, they find big bucks they want to shoot, and then they take all their cameras and they put them on that one, and they nail him down during the day. Where he is during the day is what counts. And then when the conditions are perfect, hunt that buck early or hunt him late when everything's just right. And when the conditions are perfect for this one, you go over there, and when they're perfect for that one, you go to that one. That is a tactic that can help you shift and get on big deer all the time. But it's a lot of other than deer season work. They're doing all their deer hunting while the rest of us are at seminars or fishing or at camp during the summer, right? They're putting in all their time in the late summer, nailing down exactly where that bugger is during the daylight, and then hunting him when everything's perfect and not messing him up. That is one of those things. If you're hunting any old deer, well, you can change your tactics from that. It won't have to be that. You can go where the high traffic is and where the structure and security work out during daylight hours. Very important. And especially where we are, the amount of cutting and the age of the forest is super important. Whenever you're seeing lots of this, lots of brush and nastiness, most people will look at that and they won't want to walk out into the middle of that. Those raspberry bushes that are 6 feet high, people get sick of those after just a few hours. They're very difficult. It's tough. Whenever conditions are getting tough, you'll end up having to inevitably hunt slower. You'll have to be a little bit more careful. But the deer need an ocean to hide in because there's so much hunting pressure nearly everywhere. Everywhere you go, the deer are getting hunted fairly hard. You can count on it. Whenever there's breaks in the terrain and you have to hunt it, wherever there's a little bit of shade, those are the places I want to go. If I pull up to this spot, I'm going to want to work my way around the greenery on the edge right here because the bushes aren't quite so thick. And odds are good the deer are going to want to use those same exact spots. And if there's any amount of deer traffic, it will be underneath and around all the little islands in that ocean of garbage. Large landscapes where most people would want to hunt, right? That strip of land where most people would want to be, it's going to get pounded. Doesn't mean deer don't go there, but it's going to get a lot of human traffic. This stuff down in the bottom, oh, it's nasty, and it's a lot of work. And if you kill one, it's a lot of work. But guess where that great big thing is going to be, where it's a lot of work? The cliff over on the upper corner right there, where there's that rock face. I don't know how many I've seen on the edges. Right on that, where they can shoot down or shoot up in just a few seconds and put a huge distance in between you. Steep terrain and big bucks and watery, mucky terrain with big bucks, that's where they're going to be. And especially when there's a lot of hunting pressure. That's how you get away from them. And where I generally say, and Casey's the same thing, go where you don't want to go. It matters. And Casey walks right in, usually hunts a day or two, and boom, right? It just comes together for him. Go and make yourself the discipline to go where you don't want to go. Very important. One of the things that can change your tactics is seeing some really good sign. That'll change your outlook on things. You're hunting regular deer, you're seeing regular deer, and then all of a sudden stumble onto something really big. And you say, ooh, now's the time to take that spot, mark it, and circle bigger. Circle bigger, look for more, and as soon as you find it going in one direction or the other, now start working those two directions out away from that as you go. That's been a huge one for me because we are in that really tough terrain where it's tough walking, and there's so much land to look over. If you have a small amount of land, look it over thoroughly, but do it very quietly, and don't let all the local deer that are there all the time know where you are and what you're doing, and have everything surprise, surprise. One of the greatest things is climbing stands and saddles because it's surprise, surprise, and there's something magical about being there on that brand new first day. That matters like crazy. It really does help like crazy. Any more questions? Now, one of the things that steps into play, and you can move on to the next one here, Ryan, is the rut and the timing of your season and the pattern of the time that you can go. You may not be able to hunt the whole month of November like Rodney, right? You may only have a week or two. That a lot of times, that's all I had was 1 week. I adjusted my season and patterns by whatever was going on, the pattern of that week. So knowing the patterns of the rut and the patterns of the weather in the places that you hunt is crucial. If I all of a sudden am going to do a trip to Ontario and say I'm going to go the second week in November, and I'm going to go to an area that's fairly flat, I can begin figuring out the way I'm going to hunt it because of the rut timing, the weather timing for that area, and the amount of time I'm going to spend there. If it happens to be pre-rut, right, that first week in November, their velvet is off. They're feeling it a little bit, but nothing's really happening all that much. The bucks aren't going very far. They haven't started the zombie walking all that much. It's usually warm, less chance of snow. I can't do as much real-time on-the-ground information as I can with snow. So that equation is missing a little bit. I love to scout new areas, do a lot of I might spend the entire morning scouting out a new spot and go to my old reliable spot in the afternoon. Especially if the wind happens to be calmer this afternoon and I'm a little worried about it, or the wind's going to be heavy this afternoon and I don't want him to know I'm there because it's noisy walking. I'm going to adjust my tactics to that scenario so that I've got something productive to do during the day. I'm doing some scouting. I might find a new buck during the morning and then go and hunt the reliable one in the afternoon. I'm always digging all the time, looking for that new chance, new opportunity, and learning the new spots that I haven't worked with all that much. And looking for and hunting fresh buck sign is key on the first week. Whenever you're finding rubs or scrapes, he's not moving that far. Odds are good he's within a quarter mile of that sign, and that's very important to me. I want that buck to be local. I don't want him gone. I want him to be there, and I want to be there when he's there, and that allows me to do that. Checking last year's hot spots is another one. If we have that 2.5-year-old that Taylor and I called in this last season and we let him go, that buck, I went back and checked on him 3 times, and he was still in that spot. During the rut and after the rut, he was a homebody. He lives on that knob, and he's there all the time. And I made sure to not let him know I was there. I snort wheezed him when he ran off. That video, if you watch that video of Taylor and I calling in that buck, I snort wheezed him so that he would go up the hill and not know where we were. There was another huge buck, which was the one that Casey filmed on a Sunday morning. There was that other huge buck in that area. That buck, that's a homebody. He's there all the time. He's only 2.5. He's a younger deer. He's a nice deer, maybe a 3-year-old, but this coming fall, he's going to be an absolute beauty. If I have a homebody and I know he's there, I'm going to adjust my tactics to that. So I'm going to slide right back in that same scenario and maybe try it again in that same exact spot because it worked and we didn't burn him. The buck Casey called in that was in the dark in the morning there, that's the biggest buck we've ever filmed in the wild. And he's probably 130 inches or so, and I bet he'd go 220. Oh, he's got a huge, huge body, huge track. Casey burned him. That buck, Casey did the all's well tail waggle. Sometimes you forget things, right? We're driving to camp, and I said to myself, you know what? I forgot to tell the boys about this. When you've got a deer and he's in front of you and he's a little worried about you, when deer are in a field and they're relaxed, just before they put their head down, they'll look around and then they'll do the all's well tail waggle. They'll go jingle, jingle, and then put their head down and start eating. I used to do that when a deer was really worried about me, when they were keyed on me. And I actually got some footage a week ago or so of 2 does and a buck. And I do this to them. They're in the field and they spot me a little bit. And they're like, there's something down there. And she gives me the old walk to. And I give her the jingle, jingle. I take my hand and I put it next to me and I just go like this. And she chills right out. You watch that buck that Casey called in, watch that video again, and you'll see that buck real concerned and then just lose it. He loosens right up. That can be a time saver. That tail wag could be enough for you to get the shot, to make him relax long enough so that you could step sideways, or he relaxes and takes a step. It could buy you a shot. And Casey kept he did the tipper can, and the buck came right to it. He chunka, 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 chunk right to it. And he'd been laying down a bunch of sign right there. It was first thing in the morning when most people aren't there. He comes walking right into Casey, gets there, and gets a couple molecules of him, and now he's keyed on him. And like that, And he, of course, deer make a living knowing where the sound came from, and he's keyed right on Casey. Casey's about 20 yards from him, and he's looking right at him. And Casey does the and that buck chills. You'll watch that buck relax a little bit. And then, nope, I got a little bit of something, and you're not right. And he goes back to focusing right on Casey. And Casey goes, da, 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 again. And that thing just relaxes again. And a little more time goes by, and the buck still is like, no, you are not a deer. But I'm not seeing and smelling and hearing enough to say, yes, I definitely need to leave. And you're giving me I'm a deer. Human beings, that's what we do, lie, right? And he's lying. I'm a deer. Nah, I'm a deer. Right? He's doing this to it. And the deer just relaxes. That's a tactic shift. And I had done it a lot when I was young, and I forgot about it. And I told the boys about it, and they went right out into the field and started proving it, right? Casey comes back in, and he said, that tail wagging thing worked beautiful. And that thing just stood there, and I got him on film. I did it. And I was like, yes, right? So keep those things in mind all the time because they really will help you. We move into week 2 where they're zombie walking. Bucks are feeling the rut a little bit, and they feel like they need to search and find something. Your tactics are going to be different. Number 1, the deer could be moving, and they could be moving during the day. They may go from security cover to security cover as long as those security covers contain deer, but sometimes even if they don't. I've seen a whole bunch of zombie walking activity when there were no reason for him to walk around, but he felt safe there and he felt he needed to walk. So I don't mind hunting real thick, nasty, steep terrain or wet terrain during that zombie walking period because he feels like he needs to move, but there's tons of people, and this is the only place that I can move, and I feel okay doing it. So I'll adjust my tactics. I'll hunt through that nice and slow, downwind side during the day, and then go hunt my target buck at night around his sign. Keep that all the time rolling with you. Hunting all day is definitely going to be one of your big time things. As soon as you get in from the 9th to the 15th, Lanny was saying the same thing the other night on the Hunt Suburbia podcast. He does the same thing. Kills a lot of his bucks like from the 8th to the 16th. Right in that time frame, just before the main rut fires up, and then big boys are doing their walking, circulating, you're way more likely to come into something there. Stringing buck sign together is very important at that time, and I also, as soon as I make a couple of pins of, say, I'm just walking through random country, and I come right on to a whole bunch of like 4 scrapes in a row. I'll mark that on the satellite, right? Mark the direction of that string. And now check both of the ends. But before I move, I look at it on satellite, and I say, where's the security cover near this string of sign? Because that's likely to be where he is. And if I'm going to go hunt, I don't know how many times I just walked up on a mountainside, found a whole bunch of string of sign, went down the sign just a little ways and made like a line and said, okay, he's using this one dozer road up the side of the mountain, and he's making scrapes on that. Now I'll bring up the satellite, and I'll pick the spot where I think he's actually laying, and then I'll go on the downwind side and hunt that for the rest of the day, right through that nice and easy, and work out to the rest of the area I haven't scouted yet. Real good tactic. That'll work like crazy. Okay. Yep. Doe areas, of course, are going to be where they'll be checking, but it'll be mostly more at night. They'll be going into those at night, shoving them around, seeing if there's anything interesting yet. And also, too, if there is snow on the ground, you'll see bucks checking out other bucks' sign as well. And I think this is probably where your licking branch rope kind of thing will work the best that week there. If you want to try a calling tactic, it'll work really good. And a scent tactic will work really good during this time frame. You can count on it. Bucks checking over and on each other and running up and down each other's sign is very common. It'll be I've had a few times where I sat on a whole bunch of big sign and all I saw were little bucks because they were coming to check it. So be careful, right? Jimmy's itchy trigger finger will go boom, and then doesn't end up with that target one. Sometimes that can happen as well, so be careful about that. But that's another part of the tactics that'll work great. Once you actually get into chase phase is like the beginning of chaos. The main part of the rut, especially for your target bucks, is going to be so difficult right then because they are nowhere for long. They're rotating so much, and if they do find a doe they like, now they're moving even more, and they may not stay put in any spot for more than 10 minutes. They may be rotating and moving so much in that tight security cover, especially around where the other hunters aren't. They're inside that security cover, moving all the time. This can be very difficult, and you'll end up with random bucks that might come from somewhere else. So if you're really after a target buck, this is the hardest time to get him. Even though he could randomly be there because he does live there, it's very difficult to get those, and you're more likely to get any buck. And every deer that you see might not necessarily be the one that you're after, and there's a lot of rotation in that. So using those as a security where she feels secure to run really matters. This is a difficult time for calling as well, because if you call and she's got a buck behind her and you sound like a buck, she'll be like, oh, another one. And she'll turn the corner and you won't be able to call him in. So keep that in mind all the time too. That'll really matter. Once you start getting later in the month of November, you're working on the 3rd and especially the 4th week or even the 1st week of December, they start slowing down in the actual rutting activity, right? The rut is starting to taper off, and the bucks actually will go back to ranging farther. They're still ranging the same rut activity, but they may walk farther in a line and go farther out and away in searching for things. And that makes tracks a little bit easier to find sometimes. And that'll work pretty good. They're circulating, and this is a time too when the calling will be good again, and also too scent will be good again, and that'll help. You'll also, I tend to find like the most small frustration rubs at this time as well. You see a lot of those, and just because the rubbers are small doesn't mean it isn't a big buck. Once the season is finally winding down and you're getting in that tail end of things, food sources are even more of a key. Trail connections to food sources and security cover are the new deal. Especially in the mountains or places where the snow is deep, they'll all start pulling out of the mountains and working their way down into the valleys. They'll use the security cover of a valley as they travel down through to get to the deer yard. If you're in an area like northern Maine where they might travel 20 miles to get to a deer yard, I'm looking at all the valleys. I'm looking where all the green strip and the nicest security cover, the easiest places to cross rivers, and I'm looking at the whole valley. Say it's a 15-mile long valley. I'll go down through that entire valley and say they're going to cross the roads here, 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 and above, right? Looking at those maps, I'm mapping out all those crossing points and then driving to each one of them and walking down in and checking them. And when there's a whole bunch of deer crossing in one spot, now if I have to sit, that's where I'm going to sit. Late season, end of the day, it's winding down. Everything's coming down the valley. I know which direction to face. They're all coming this way. That migration trail kind of thing where they get on top of each other. And that's one other thing that I want to add to this talk because we're almost done here. Yeah, we got like 5 minutes. What happened at the end of the season, and I was told, like, there's this migration trail develops. And I'm like, what do they all do? Get in a V pattern and head to town? Like, how's that? Show me how this works, because I'm not seeing this. This last season, there's a section where the deer don't have much space, and the valley is very narrow. And it's about 1.5 miles long, where the valley is really narrow. And the deer have no choice but to go down through there. There's a road. There's open woods. There's a road. There's very dense, terrible, super thick. And then a bunch of water and swamp, impenetrable, and then back to beautiful woods and lots of hunters. And, of course, the two sides have lots of hunters on them, and the road has lots of people. Everyone in the woods says, I'm not going to hunt over there, and I'm not going to hunt over there. I'm going to go in that thick spot. So all the deer hunters go in the thick spot, and they put tree stands all the way down through that thick spot, all the way down through there. Now, all the local does that know where those tree stands are, they're in those woods. And every time they're walking along and they know the guy from New York has a tree stand over here, when they're 100 yards from it, they turn and they go around it because they're locals. They live there and they know that stand is a problem. And their trail goes around that because they're local deer. Now when the migration deer come down through, they're from 20 miles away, but they don't know that tree stand situation. And there's 5 tree stands down this 1.5 mile stretch of road. And they're scattered all the way down through there. Those deer come down and hit those other deer's tracks and follow right around all those tree stands. And all those guys could have been in those tree stands, and they would have had literally 50 deer walk by them in a 2-day period, all heading down to the yard, and they were going to the yard. Main muzzleloader at the end. Last day, last few hours. And I'm walking down through there following Casey's big buck and another buck with a doe. So there's 2 big buck and the doe in front of me, and they're going down this. And they've been hanging out 6 miles from the spot where Casey jumped him. I find him way to hell back there, and he's coming this way. So there he is. Attaboy. And we're going and going and going. And all the way down through there, the local deer inadvertently taught all the migrating deer, don't walk in these spots where those tree stands are, because those guys were so reliable, sitting in their stands, doing the same thing over and over, walking out, sitting, and walking back. And the local deer knew how to avoid all that. They had seen all these people. And the trail developed around everyone else. And it developed in the wide open. And there was no one taking advantage of it. And here I come along the back at the very end, and I'm like, oh, so that's how the trail develops. It develops around your local deer. So if you have 20 acres in Massachusetts and you set up a stand, and the does that live right there know you very well, guess where the buck is not going to go? No, nowhere near your stand, because she inadvertently walks around and he's checking her and he watches her, and the things she's cautious about, it leads him away. She's cautious about those things. So be very careful about your tactics and how you do it. Observe yourself a lot. Any questions? Thanks for coming, everybody. Appreciate it. My voice is falling off, but thank you so much, and have a great hunting season.